You know Esther Perel is coming to the table. She's going to be at the red table. Would you say she has been instrumental in you and I redefining our relationship?
I would say don't just start filming me without asking me.
Oh my goodness. I'm still dealing with foolishness.
Don't, cause she don't just start rolling. I'm standing in my house. Don't just start rolling.
Please watch us stare at the red table because she's helped us a lot. Can't you tell?
Like I curtsied as though I was like, pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty.
Last week after I posted my review of the book Spare, a friend of mine sent me a message pointing out the similarities between the relationship of Meghan and Harry to that of Will Smith and Jada. And the second I read that, I was like, yes, that is exactly it. Because not only are the two men like dealing with this kind of bubbling anger that is so palpable, you feel like there's so much that's repressed. There's similarities between the way Jada and Meghan, they both present themselves in this kind of very well-spoken, covertly narcissistic way, and they keep both their husbands under their thumbs. But the difference is that Will Smith and Jada's relationship is almost like 20 years behind Meghan and Harry. Or in other words, Meghan and Harry can still pretend, or rather Harry still hasn't exploded yet. Although the book is the equivalent of the slap from Will. So he is already exploding, maybe it's on a fast track, but they still didn't reach the peak that Will and Jada reached. And another similarity is that both men released autobiographies in which they talk about how helpless they felt as children towards the injustice that their mothers faced and that inability to save their mothers. And in Harry's case, it's obvious what he couldn't save her from. But in Will's case, his mother used to suffer abuse at the hands of his father, and he still is racked with guilt for not being able to stand up for her. And that's kind of what triggered him when he went up to slap Chris Rock to defend Jada. And that's exactly it. Will is trying to defend Jada and save her as a way of saving his mother, and so is Harry. And both of them seem to be married to women for whom nothing is good enough. And I think it's because both of these women are deeply narcissistic. And narcissism can be defined by a set of personality traits that are characterized by self-centeredness, the need for validation. And I think what's tricky in the case of both Meghan and Jada is that because they're attached to men who are powerful in society and they have this social currency and they have this power and wealth that both of these women crave, so they do have to play the covert role. And there are many clues as to why both of these women are narcissistic, and we're going to get into those in this video, and also my connection to this, because I've been on this kind of journey of criticizing Meghan, but I have to admit that I'm ashamed to admit this, and we're gonna get into this video, there are some narcissistic personality traits in me that luckily, thanks to a mental breakdown 10 years ago, have kind of calmed down. But I think the root of that and why that triggers me so much is because it's something in me, and we're gonna get into it in the video. But whether you want to go with the label of narcissistic or not, what these two men, Will and Harry, are dealing with are partners that are impossible to change. And because they know they can't change those partners, they just accept this degradation of themselves. And I think my dear friend Anna Runkle from The Crappy Childhood Fairy has a couple of words that fit this quite well.
Yeah, without even having to label it. In our experience, well, I won't say our experience, in my experience, what that led to instead was this round and round on a merry-go-round of getting all attached to somebody, getting disenchanted, trying to change them, getting all freaked out, having a horrible breakup, and repeating the cycle again and again. Feeling like, oh, what an idiot I am, and why couldn't I see it coming? And all of that was so demoralizing for me. And I knew that if I was going to have a great love in my life and a real partner, that I had to first stop all that degradation of myself.
Hey guys, I'm In Denial, your favorite drag therapist, the only drag therapist on the internet. As I always say, I'm in denial so you can wake up. And this week we're going to get into the similarities between the way Jada treats Will and the way Meghan treats Harry. And by the way, I just heard that Love is Blind is releasing the new After the Altar episode tomorrow. And that Love is Blind episode is probably already out as you're watching this video, and I'm gonna put a review of it sooner than a week, because I just can't wait to get into it. But for now, let's get into this week's video. And the first clue that you're dealing with a narcissistic partner, or in this case, a narcissistic wife, is that they're always disappointed and hypercritical, and whatever you do, it's never good enough for them. And that was something quite obvious in Will Smith's case when he was preparing this big 40th birthday for Jada, and she hated it.
Her 40th birthday was going to be my thing.
It was going to be a splash.
It was going to be a splash. Mary J. Blige performed. It was going to be the thing that lifted her out of this midlife crisis, and it was going to be my deepest, most beautiful proclamation of love. And the whole time I'm like, the little boy that wants mommy to say everything was wonderful, right? And she's having a really difficult emotional time, right? And she's told me that the party was the most ridiculous display of my ego.
Ooh.
And in that infamous red table talk between Will and Jada, where they just basically put it on the table, saying that she did have an affair with that guy, August.
And then what did you do, Jada?
Well, you know, I think I got into a different kind of entanglement.
I think you need to say clearly what happened.
And I got into an entanglement with August. That's what I said.
An entanglement?
Yes. Yes.
A relationship.
Basically, Will said, you need to go make yourself happy because it's impossible for me to make you happy.
We decided that we were going to separate for a period of time, and you go figure out how to make yourself happy.
And when they did that interview, it was in reaction to August having already spoken about the affair on a radio show, so they were kind of like doing damage control. And at that point, Jada was kind of put in a corner, so you can tell the power dynamic is a little bit different, where Will is just, all right, let's get to this, because he was already embarrassed and he was just wanted her to own up to it. And despite that, she was still playing the kind of like the victim of a bad marriage, that she's this noble victim.
So what happened, Jada?
Okay. I think it was about 4 years ago. Started a friendship with August. And it all started with him just needing some help. Me wanting to help his health, his mental state.
Basically, I got together with this guy because he needed my help. And I was broken. And even though the biggest sign of a narcissistic partner is how hypercritical they are of the other, they still cannot take criticism. And this is very obvious in the case of Meghan. And I'm gonna put a couple of examples where it wasn't even a criticism, it was something that she even perceived as criticism. One where they were together, the foursome, William and Kate and Meghan and Harry, in the happy beginnings, when they were setting up the royal foundation, and Meghan came in last because she had only been recently married to Harry. So it was already put together by William, Kate, and Harry. And the interviewer asked Kate about it, and Kate was saying, oh, the three of us, meaning her, William, and Harry, and not Meghan. And Meghan was just listening like,
But it was something that I think all three of us at the time felt that we really could make a far bigger impact together.
And just a second later, she just started saying how even though, she was just helping always behind the scenes, as if she does anything behind the scenes. Girl.
Yes, I mean, I think that knowing that I've just been here for 3 months, right? And in that amount of time, but with that said, for me, it's very important to, once you hit the ground running, even if you're doing it quietly behind the scenes, which is what I've focused my energy on thus far, is meeting with the right people, meeting with the right organizations behind the scenes quietly.
And another example in that BBC interview where they first announced their engagement, Harry and Meghan, Harry was just talking about like he never heard of the show Suits that Meghan was on, and Meghan was listening to him like.
So how much did you, Prince Harry, know about Meghan? Had you seen her on TV?
No, I'd never even heard about her until this friend said Meghan Markle. I was like, I'd never watched Suits. I'd never heard of Meghan before, and
like, wait, like, how dare you say you haven't heard of me? And then later she just turns to the interviewer and says, well, me too. I haven't heard of the royal family.
I think for both of us, so it was really refreshing because, given that I didn't know a lot about him,
like everyone in the world knows the royal family, but we talked a lot about Megan in the last few weeks, so I'm done going there. I can't get myself angry anymore. And actually, it's not that I can't get myself to be angry anymore. I just realized, as I was preparing this video, I realized, why am I triggered by people like that so much? It's because of a personal connection, but we're gonna get to that in a minute, wait. And of course, the biggest mark of a narcissistic person is how obsessed they are with, you know, image and optics of how things appear. Because at the end of that the interview that the four of them had, when the interviewer just like kind of cheekily says, so are there any disagreements? And everyone just kind of like chuckles and laughs because it's, you know, it's okay. And, you know, Kate laughs and so does William. And Megan immediately like reaches for Harry, like trying to control what he says.
Disagreements about things?
Oh, yes. Healthy disagreement.
Okay, the last thing you disagreed on?
And another clue pointing to a narcissistic partner or wife in this case is how they isolate their partner from everyone and by criticizing people. And this happens over a long period of time. And in the case of Megan, it was in that Netflix documentary, there was this one scene where the rumors were coming out that that stories were being leaked about her and Harry to the press. And she kind of like leaves the table and walks away and tells Harry, well, I'm not gonna say it's your brother, but you know your brother, and I kind of in this very passive aggressive way.
But so how do we deal with that? Like, of course, like it's your brother. I'm not gonna say anything about your brother, but it's so obvious.
This is only in front of the camera, so Lord knows how many times this was like happening, basically to isolate him from his family and basically keep him to herself. And the irony or the paradox in why narcissistic people do that to their partners, why they isolate them from their loved ones, is because they themselves are afraid of being left behind. So they want to hold on to the person because they think, maybe if my partner has, you know, long-term, you know, healthy relationships with other people, they might leave me. And what's interesting, anytime I've ever watched a clip of Meghan and Harry, she's always holding on to him tight. Like even when it's not necessary. At that funeral when they both came back, first of all, when they get out of the car, you can just watch the body language and you can see how Meghan is just separate from everyone. And then the second she reaches Harry, she just holds on to him and she keeps walking with him. And there was another example of how I think points to how alone she feels all the time, or how unwanted she feels by other people. When they were visiting the US troops, I'm gonna play it here because the body language in that just shows you how alone she is, like how almost like nobody wants to be near her and she's just trying to be funny. It's so awkward. This is like how she's behaving in this clip is exactly like the guy from The Office. It's like, oh, it's pretty cringe. But basically, because I really don't want to keep making fun of her and other narcissistic people, I think this is because the way you do that as a narcissist is so unconscious because you're just filled with shame and you feel alone. And another tactic that narcissistic use, or a clue when you know you have a narcissistic partner, is that they're always trying to make you feel jealous. Like they could always leave you for someone better. And no one did this better than Jada. Because in the throughout their marriage, like throughout the first 10 years of their marriage, she would have interviews where she would just talk openly about how much she loved Tupac, the rapper who died, who was, you know, to whom she was really close.
You know, talk about my relationship with Pac and trying to figure that out, you know, and that was a huge loss in my life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there was even this one letter that was published by their daughter Willow on her Instagram, but later deleted. Basically in that letter, Willow, who was like 11 or 12, was writing a letter to the dead Tupac saying, please come back because my mother is so unhappy. Like imagine what Jada would have told her daughter for Willow to write something like that, to even believe that a dead man whom she's never met is going to make her mother happy. Like what a blow to the self-esteem of Will. And Will went on many interviews after that saying that he was actually always so jealous of Tupac. And he wrote about it in his autobiography as well.
Were you ever jealous of the love Jada had for Tupac?
Yeah.
My relationship was really special. It was very complicated.
And the way a narcissistic person does that to their partner, making them jealous basically, is the idea of it, the subtext is that they're telling their partner, you were never good enough for me to be with in the first place. And that was quite obvious in that red table talk between Will and Jada, when Will was asking her to, come clean about the whole thing. And after she said that, she was broken, and August, that the guy she was sleeping with was also not in a good place and she was helping him. Basically, she says, I haven't felt good in a long time. And she stresses it.
I just wanted to feel good. It had been so long since I felt good.
That's basically like, I've never felt good with you. So how humiliating. And if you watch his face, Will, throughout that interview, the rage. No wonder he went on stage 2 years later and slapped Chris Rock. And something that goes hand in hand with this making your partner jealous is withholding intimacy and not having sex. And I think there was a very telling clue in an interview that Will Smith did with Oprah when Oprah was asking him about the alleged rumors that they have an open relationship and that they're swingers or they sleep with other people. And Will, like, very jokingly says, we ain't doing much of nothing.
Does that mean you all can have other partners?
People only think in terms of sex. Will and Jada, what they doing with other people? Will and Jada ain't really doing too much of nothing.
And they both laugh, him and Oprah. It's like basically saying, not only are we not sleeping with other people, we're not even sleeping together. And they both laugh about it, but it's like, that is a laugh of someone who hasn't had sex for a while. I don't know, maybe I'm projecting, but girl. And another thing that a narcissistic partner does is that they're always threatening to leave. That also goes hand in hand. It feels like the clues are all connected to each other because they are. And I think what a narcissistic person does to their partner is making them feel like, I could leave you any minute. That I don't need you, you need me. And this is something when Prince Harry was negotiating the Megxit, Meghan took Archie and went to Canada, and she was seen photographed without her ring and basically just very gently reminding him, like, this is what the picture will look like if you don't negotiate things the way I want. Basically, I'm gonna leave you. And we've come to that point in the video where I'm going to talk about my personal connection to this story and why I'm so triggered by people who are narcissistic. I remember when I was with my ex, I'm kind of like embarrassed and ashamed to admit this, but I will. I remember my partner distinctly telling me, like, I don't know what we were talking about, having other friends or doing something. And he said, I'm just basically preparing for when the time you leave me. And that like hit really hard because of course on a conscious level, I wasn't planning to leave. When you, let's say, leave someone or break up or you end up hurting your partner, you're not sitting there plotting it like a witch, like things just happen. And even if you're behaving selfishly or narcissistically, you're probably doing it unconsciously. And for me, I think the best thing that happened in my life is having developed anxiety and a panic disorder in my early 30s, which thankfully is like, I don't know if it's gone. I think I have more like a generalized anxiety now. And I touched on it in the last video where I mentioned my history with Xanax and with weed, which I, thank God, quit. But I'm probably going to make a video in a few weeks about my journey with anxiety. But basically, I say all this to say that if it weren't for anxiety, I would have just carried on being just clueless about how other people feel and basically behave like a narcissist. So as painful as it was going through those kind of like severe panic attacks, that was a very nice mirror to how I was and how I behaved towards other people. And I've been single ever since because I don't know. Basically, I was a narcissist in my previous relationship and yikes. Yeah, but I think for me, the journey of healing began kind of very serious in the beginning, and it was very painful because anyone who tells you becoming self-aware is like a fun thing, no girl, it is painful. That's why so many people avoid it. And most of the time when we do come to it is because of a crisis. And for me, the first few years were just a nightmare. Like I didn't understand what the hell was happening. And I did 4 years of like, traditional therapy, like cognitive behavior therapy. And that really helped a lot. And I internalized a lot of those tools. But then what ended up happening, after time, there was some ease and I could like kind of have a little bit more play. And I think over time is when I started to do drag and kind of bring a little more fun into this healing. And that's how I started, first lip syncing to a lot of these spiritual teachers. And I ended up meeting some of them, like Anna Runkle, who I lip-sync to. And speaking of Anna Runkle, this is a part of a chat that I had with her. It wasn't really about narcissism, but there was this one sentence that she said that kind of sums up the way I treated my ex, and I think the way people like Meghan and Jada treat their partners, because it's out of fear. You're just trying to control the other person.
Every time I objectified somebody, every time I tried to like fashion them into the boyfriend I wanted rather than honoring the person they were, even if that person is like unavailable, drug addict, whatever, you know, but if I'm just trying to like pretend there's something they're not, it's objectifying. It's like your own needs are coming out like a monster and just trying to like grab onto people with claws.
And I think there's a lot of fear underneath narcissistic traits. And it happens because, well, narcissism, for me, what it is, it's a block to emotions and feelings. So it's impossible for you to be connected to your partner because you're just so self-absorbed. Even if it's in a kind of a victim way where you're just feeling sorry for yourself, you still cannot, you can't be connected to anyone else. And the last sign of being with a narcissistic partner is that they're always blame shifting, using the person as the punching bag, putting all the mistakes onto them. And when the shit hits the fan, they're out of the picture. And if you remember after the slap, which ruined, not only ruined Will's career, he did it all to defend her, which was a very misguided, disproportionate way of defending her. Because that joke, by the way, about G.I. Jane, it's so harmless. Like, it was even kind of like a compliment, because when Chris Rock called her like G.I. Jane was filmed by Demi Moore in her prime. And it was kind of like she was this hot soldier. So he wasn't even talking about alopecia or her rare disease. He didn't even know about that. But anyway, that look that she gave kind of like fired Will up, and he went and slapped Chris. Yeah, all that he did to defend her. And then after that, she not only does she not address it, and she goes on with the red table talk as if nothing happened, she just says this kind of very like...
About Oscar night, my deepest hope is that these two intelligent, capable men have an opportunity to heal, talk this out, and reconcile.
Not only does she not stand up for him or try to defend him, she says, oh, this is the time for healing, and now moving on, and red table talk continued without any mention of it.
Pinkett Smith then spent the remaining time on her Red Table Talk show to discuss alopecia, a condition she has openly struggled with. Will Smith has been banned from the Academy Awards for the next 10 years over that slap.
And similarly, Meghan was everywhere with Prince Harry, and now that there's a lot of backlash against the book, like, she's nowhere to be seen. So how do you deal with a partner who is narcissistic? Basically, accept the truth that they are a narcissist, as hard as it is. You have to see it for what it is. And when you do start to see them in a clear way, expect a lot of pushback, expect a lot of resistance, and you have to hold your ground. But whether it's narcissistic or not, anytime you wake up to a reality that you've been asleep on, that's going to challenge the relationships in your life. So expect a lot of resistance. And just be prepared for that, and ensure that you have a nice support network of friends that can hold your hand through it and remind you, because it is very easy to relapse, especially if you're in love with the person. I would say the best piece of advice is something I've heard Dr. Ramani here on YouTube, who is like the world leading expert in narcissism, and she speaks a lot about it. It's almost funny how like matter of fact she is about it. Like, never expect a narcissist to just wake up or be happy that you confronted them, because they just won't. And there's a method that Dr. Ramani talks about. It's called many experts on narcissism talk about it. It's the gray rock method. Basically, it means you have to become like a gray rock, basically completely emotionless and no feeling, because that's the only way you can deal with them. You know, just restrict your conversations to talking about the weather, and you can't do that in a relationship. The only way you can do that is if you've broken up and you know, maybe you've divorced and you still need to deal with your narcissistic partner over children. So yeah, you can adopt this gray rock method where you can keep feelings aside, but you can't be in a relationship a day in and day out with someone and be like a gray rock. That's impossible. So either manage your expectations or stay with them and not confront, or break up. And if you have to deal with them, develop this gray rock method. And regarding Will, I don't think he's ever gonna leave Jada, because in that interview where they talk about her affair, at the end of it, they just kind of fist bump and they go, bad marriage for life.
We ride together.
We die together.
Bad marriage for life.
It's actually not that funny, but I mean, that's the only way to put up with relationships that require you to live in denial is, yeah, you just have to keep going. Otherwise, you break up. And because I really don't want to end this on a negative note, also during the research, why kind of like I softened up a little bit. I was watching a lot of Red Table Talks that Jada did, and there was one she did with her kids where I was like, I really can't see her just as this evil narcissist, because the way she was talking about how difficult it is to parent and how proud she is of her kids, and there was something so genuine and sincere in that interview. I was like, I actually can't hate you. And then I start to realize, you know, my own connection to this, and that, yeah, so let's leave it with that positive note. And next video is going to be Love is Blind After the Altar.
I can't wait to see how this turns out.